Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences patented technology protects any application against any attack with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences. As the world of software-driven everything becomes a reality and development cycles speed up, sales teams are taking a new approach to application security, one that enables security teams to scale by empowering developers to integrate security into their development workflows and toolsets, all while giving security teams the visibility and control they need. Snyk helps software-driven businesses develop fast and stay secure with a developer-first solution that seamlessly and proactively finds and fixes vulnerabilities in open-source libraries and containers. Learn more and see the solution for yourself at securityweekly.com/Snyk. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV courses live and on demand, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Team subscriptions include Pro Portal, so managers have full control over your team's training schedule. Go to itpro.tv/ASW and use the code ASW30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership.
Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. I'm your host, Mike Shima, joined by Matt Alderman and John Kinsella, and we have Paul with us too.
Yay.
Look at this.
So excited. I haven't done the show in so long.
It's been so long.
And there was an open
Missed
seat.
you.
So I think I can do better than the open seat is what I'm saying.
Oh, definitely.
That's where I'm setting the bar.
I can do better than nobody.
Yes.
Well, and we get to see you in person too, so this is actually even better.
Nice.
So yeah, this is the first time that all
We've
four
already-
of us have been together.
When my brother-in-law and I get together, he works in software, and we start talking nerd speak. He says the propellers are spinning, right? So it was really windy in here when John and Mike and I got together. So.
Yeah, well, and it's even getting a little bit, it hasn't gotten quite so crazy. We're here at RSA Conference, and it's going to get even crazier. But there's already a lot of events and product releases, product announcements that's happened. And I even alluded to in the beginning, the Innovation Sandbox has been taken over by AppSec. And I think you you enjoy this, right, Matt?
I do. I love innovation. I love to see these new startup companies. And I was out checking last week because they made the announcement earlier this month on who was going to be the 10 finalists. And I started looking at the list and I'm like, there's a lot of application security companies up on the stage. Yeah. And 6 of the 10 have some sort of application cloud kind of component to them, which I thought was interesting, right? We've seen themes in Innovation Sandbox over the years. A couple of years ago, it was all about privacy with GDPR, and you saw a bunch of privacy companies. So you've seen this kind of evolution. But for this show, we just finished our interview with Chris Eng from Veracode, and we were talking about, the growth of the application security space. And here you see 6 of the 10 companies in Innovation Sandbox and doing something around application security, which I thought was just really intriguing and interesting. So I got them all in the show notes. A couple interesting ones, we should probably just kind of go through and say, what are these guys doing, right? Why did they get picked? And this list is alphabetical, so I can't control the order much. But App Omni is a service that scans the SaaS platforms used by companies to provide management, security, and data access visibility. So it's a little bit of a SaaS application / data with a little bit of user kind of stuff in it. So it hits my triad, right? App, user, data. In this solution, it's funded by Clear Sky, which is Jay Leak's venture capital fund.
There's a lot of these solutions on the market, I feel like, though.
There's
a lot of ways to skin this cat, even between cloud and SaaS, looking at because everything is configuration.
Yeah, you could do it with a CASB.
Yeah.
And we've seen the cloud providers, both AWS and GCP, have solutions in this space to say, we know that there's this sensitive data out there. We'll go look for it for you. Mm-hmm. Remains to be seen how easy it is to actually look for it and how many false positives you're getting. Because we don't want to suddenly say, cool, look at all this data that just so happens to be 16 digits, but this is a timestamp and not actually a credit card number.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry, John. I was just going to say, I look at those as kind of the first line of defense because Amazon added something else into AMI roles that lets you look at the privileges. That's fairly new. That I want to say they announced. I don't remember what it's called now because there's like a new Amazon product every day with a new name.
Pretty much.
But basically, when I first went in to set up AMI roles, I was like, wow, this is really confusing. There's lots of roles and lots of policies. Someone can screw this up easily. I look at Amazon in this example as their kind of first pass as, all right, I didn't screw things up too bad. And then I look to other vendors as I get really big in my cloud deployment or my SaaS offerings to tell me about the nitty gritty kind of things as a second layer of defense.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, so I'm trying to get better at particularly this show, but most of these shows actually coming in here with some sort of order and what do I actually want to see and go through. And one of the things that I actually had on my list for this week is data security. It seems like there's a lot of companies starting to get into that space. So the question is, how much of this is taking the old brush and sort of painting something that already exists into the data security space, or is it something more like, what these guys are doing at Apponi? So it'll be interesting to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
We'll be interviewing Gabriel Gums on Thursday from Spirion, talking exactly about the topic of data security, actually using some of our own data as an example. Because I was like, Gabe, how does it work? I'm like, all right, I got this data, and then here's the process it goes through. And he was like, oh yeah, we can help you with the so it helps really paint a clear picture and a use case. So that'll be Thursday.
Yeah, that's good. The second one is Blue Bracket. Application code. It looks like a application code scanner, right? Code Secure searches code for secrets, from passwords and tokens to unauthorized code that might have sneaked in during your GitLab push or whatever. So this is
there's two different problems there. There's a problem of secrets, which is a huge pain in the butt when you're developing applications today. We could do a whole segment just on that easily. We could do almost a whole show, a series of shows on that topic. But the other one of code sneaking in, like from a library, it's very difficult to differentiate malicious code from not malicious code when it's in a library that you include, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's possible, but there's so many legitimate use cases and so many different ways really to write the code that it would appear legitimate, right? But it's really nefarious.
You have to have, I think, a human. Well, we'll see what happens with the machine learning over time, but you have to have a pretty good understanding of the patterns of how that person or team is developing in the first place to be able to start doing that. The interesting part about this one to me was the secret management. So how do you detect what's a password or a key in a source file or in a config file or what have you, right?
Or environmental.
Environmental. I've had customers previously go, can we give you our password list? And then no, I don't want your password. No. I don't want to grep that. But so how do you do it? So
and it's a big problem because there's been a history of Netflix and their great open source tools had NetScumbler. There's also Trufflehog, which is another latest reincarnation of people knowing these secrets are going to show up somewhere in our code. We need to go be able to find it. But again, you need to be able to deploy this tool in a way that's actually easy, a way that's user-friendly, and a way that can actually look at all these code repos and figure out what's the password versus what's just a test environment that this is okay.
One of the things I've done to get around this problem locally, deploying one application, is I wrote a build script that just changes the passwords on every build. So even if someone does getting it, it's just for my own development, I basically call OpenSSL random, assign that to a variable, and if I build it in all containers, that's the thing. My database container has to be a container. It can't be RDS or something else. I can basically set the password on every build. That's how I get around it. Because I'm like, well,
so then you don't have to scan for them.
Steal my passwords. They're only good for however long. Basically, trying to minimize the risk. But I think that the real solution is you just need a vault.
Yeah.
Right? It's really... But even someone said that... I think it was Ian Coldwater said that HashiCorp, for example, got better at end-to-end protection of the secret. I meant to contact her and because we didn't have time during the interview to dig into exactly what she meant. But there's definitely some nuances in all of the different... And then the problem we were talking about earlier where if you're deploying in Amazon, every Amazon service supports a different type of vault. Maybe none, maybe some, maybe one, but not the. So you end up with the what's it called? Systems Manager Protected, protected node or something like that. There's a protected.
I know they had their Cloud V1, Cloud V2, their KMS. So they had
And they have KMS, which is built in, which you use for certificate management. but also they have AWS Secrets Manager,
Right.
which is for other types of secrets. So like, I want to manage one vault, right? At least for this one application, one vault. And that's why I think my next project will be HashiCorp and like including that. But then what if you don't have, what if you don't have containers? I don't know. I wanted to talk about that at some point in the show too.
You can still use Vault without containers.
Yeah, you could just deploy it up into AWS and use it.
Number 3 was For All Secure. Addresses security through the related topic of code quality. They use next generation fuzzing, there's an NG term for us, to continuously test code for defects as the code moves through the software product lifecycle.
So
they've been around for a while. They were founded in 2012, which is kind of interesting. You don't see a company that's been around for almost 8 years show up in the Innovation Sandbox because innovation, it's usually the
I thought
newer
there was a
companies.
cap on how old they could be.
It's obviously
8 years.
It's next gen.
It's at least 8 years. Yeah, but it is next gen fuzzing.
Yeah, so at least on this, what really, they start off with a good stat at the top of their website. Applications, and it's a little markety, but application attack surface is growing by 111 billion lines of software code every year. And this comes back to when we were talking with Chris about this AppSec space has really started growing, and it's not about to get smaller, and it's that number is big enough. It really slams it home at you. So,
what I like about this, and I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there's like a point in your application where you can fuzz your application without using the web interface, right? Like there's looking at the source code, there's looking at if you've got binaries in whatever language that you're programming in, right? And then there's the web layer. But the place where you write your unit tests, where basically, for those that program, right, when you're importing all of your modules and objects, and then you can access them directly. So I can create a user, right? But I don't need to call the web interface to do that. I'm just instantiating objects. And that's typically where you do a first pass of your unit testing, right? Then there's usually a series after that may use the web interface to test that aspect. But I like, because I'm a hacker, I cheat, right? And I'll write stuff and test it in that mode and then move it into the web interface. But that, I think, is an opportunity to do fuzzing within your application.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome for also regression testing, too. Like, I made a change. Now go instantiate all of my objects and do all the things and hit as much of the code as I can through every method, make sure I didn't break anything, right? And that's also, I think, a good place to do security testing. No, have you guys seen anything?
Yeah,
like
I was going to say this is absolutely for those people who want to equate security with quality. Because a lot of the fuzzing, it's going to say, if something crashes, that's a bug to fix. Now, from the security angle, it possibly could be a exploitable bug, something even more important, risky to fix. But this is a great way to say with fuzzing, you're generating a bunch of unit test cases, a bunch of abuse cases, if you will. And these are problems that have to get, bugs that come back to the developer. So I think that's a really great thing to see from this type of approach. Would be really curious to that time trade-off though, because you're cheating and taking some smart shortcuts because you've got that human brain going on. So those areas to poke at.
Right.
Fuzzing can be a time sink. It can be complex to figure out, are we actually exercising all the necessary code paths? Because you know what those brittle places are going to be. But it'd be great to see a tool like this being able to do that and highlight, here is coverage of all of the app that's been put together. And we actually have some more confidence of those few billion lines of code. We've gotten at least more than 10 of them.
Right.
True. Number 4, Obsidian Security. Web-based service that applies security to all SaaS applications. This is similar to the other one I think we just talked about, right? You could also, I guess, use a CASB to do this. They promise
Ben is awesome, by the way,
frictionless.
and their culture is awesome. There was a video they posted where Ben's one of the founders, and it's his birthday, and he walks in his office, and it's filled with balloons and stuff like that. And they're in San Diego. Like, it seems like a really cool company, fun company.
They so they're trying to manage this whole SaaS identity. It's called the Obsidian Cloud Detection Response, I think is the name of the product, but brings in some identity into the application as well. Found in 2017, so they're well within the 8-year window.
Yeah, and we've interviewed those guys in the past.
Have we?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were at an endpoint company or something before then.
Oh, okay.
They got bought. I forget which one, but
Got
anyway,
it.
yeah.
Number 5 on the list is Screen with a Q, SQREEN, kind of like the old squirrel product. The Screen. Let's see. Provides application security with an emphasis on managing the security process and how it is applied. They use a micro agent, John, to automatically monitor sensitive app routines, block attacks, and report actionable information to a security dashboard. Interesting.
Well, that sounds familiar.
These guys are doing some interesting stuff. I've looked at them before. I never really thought of them as a in the exact same space. They're a little more looking at the AppSec side purely. But yeah, they've been around for I think about a year and a half.
Yeah, 2018 it says.
I mean, how many things do I need to hook in my containers? Because my goal, and I don't know how much. I mean, some of it's security benefit, some of it might be performance. I always think of it as like a challenge or a game. Like, how small can I get my container, right? Mm-hmm. But then security comes to me and says, well, you need to hook this, micro agent or library in and hook this other one. I want to hook one thing, I think, not multiple things in my container. And I don't want that one thing to be gigantic either, right? Or, I mean, how much does it matter, like size of container?
Well, so
does size really matter?
Size always matters. The phrase, the way I used to talk about this with some of our customers was customers go out to Amazon or wherever, even at hardware, they're buying compute to run their application, not to run my security that I want to sell to them. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like one of the things, like what is that balance in there? I don't think the size is, I've seen users that had 20, 30, 40,000 container hosts. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time, if they start doing a pull, that size then matters, right? But I think otherwise for something smaller, if it's within reason, you see them sort of do the calculation in their head and go, that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
This micro agent concept, this was some of the stuff that some of the container security guys were doing.
Yeah.
But they all do it now.
There's always so many ways you can skin the cat.
Yeah.
There's only so many ways.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just wondering where their little micro agent hooks in. Interesting. How many patents did they step on?
I think some of their stuff is open source, if I remember right.
Oh, is it?
I could be wrong, but I think so.
Well, I mean, Falco does not the monitoring, right? Doesn't Sysdig do some of this that's open source?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Falco is the
Falco's
open source side. Yeah. Yep.
It's in CNCF now.
Yep. And that's all kernel layer based stuff today.
BPF?
Yeah, eBPF. Yeah.
eBPF, yeah.
No, they have a kernel module.
Oh, they have their own kernel module.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Cilium uses eBPF to do what they do, and then there's a couple other approaches out there. Yeah. The last one was Tala Security. Has a security layer to web applications with protection intended to defend the server and application against all client-side threats.
Secure the modern web at scale.
Yes. And they talk a lot about AI. Well, there's some intelligence in AI in here and stuff. I don't know exactly how they do it. I didn't get a chance to look them up beforehand.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I'm curious to watch them too, just because they're calling out attacks like MageCart and form jacking. And these are the things that are, if you're running if you're selling tickets to a venue or something like that, you have to deal with bots, deal with bad actors or inauthentic behavior. So be kind of curious to see how much do you just drop in that JavaScript to identify this is what the bad actor looks like versus this is what Mike is looking like trying to go interact with the website. So
interesting.
Yeah.
It's
and when you say drop JavaScript, the way some of them work is it drops JavaScript that runs on the client side.
Yep.
Right, and that's where it's executing.
Yeah.
It's funny, not to knock them at all, but with the M&A hat on, when I see listing out that specific of things that they protect against, the first question that comes to me is that all they protect against? So
there are other companies that have done that. John. Like for example, Shape, which was recently acquired
by F5.
Similar thing. Yep.
I was talking to one of the Shape guys last night at Occidental Cigar. We were chatting. Yeah, F5 just bought them. Actually, F5 has an announcement in the next segment, in the next section we're going to talk through. So,
before we get to that section, I wanted to sneak another one here because when we were talking with Chris, he mentioned, for example, like security champions programs and doing training. There's Elevate Security that's on this list too, and they've been really good at saying the old way of doing security awareness training is kind of broken. Like, why read these bunch of slideware. I can't remember. I think that was the term that Chris
Yes.
used. And they've taken the approach and say, what's some metrics, what's some behaviors we want to drive, and how can we do that and actually engage and do some nudges directly to individuals to direct them in the behavior that we'd like to see. So I think that's a really great thing that's addressing that people aspect of DevSecOps. So I'm going to sneak that into
We've
at
done,
least number 7 on there.
At least 2 interviews, maybe 3 with Masha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
Elevate.
Yep. Yeah, and she's been around. So 2017, we've done at least 2, I think, interviews with her, and because she was just recently funded, I think, last year or something like that.
Yeah.
I think she got funding last year. Yeah,
We did like 1 interview, and then after that, she did get funding and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 7 out of 10. It was just very interesting to see how many application security kind of companies were in the list this year for the Innovation Sandbox.
Be interesting to see what the breakdown on the floor is compared to that too. So I never go through that map.
Yeah, but
That's torture.
Yeah, I still think it's pretty heavy network and endpoint.
Yeah. A few more years for them to sort of trickle
Yeah,
out.
exactly. The endpoint guys definitely, there's a lot of them out there. So, and then I pulled a few product announcements. So, it's interesting. We saw a little bit of news hit last week, not a ton. I expected a little more news drop today, right? And I didn't see a ton of news drop for RSA today. Maybe we'll see some more drop over the next few days. It'll be interesting as we get to Pulse Security Weekly on Thursday. We'll try to do a news roundup for the rest of RSA Conference. But there were 3 specific, what I consider kind of application security focused. F5 empowers customers with end-to-end app security. I think this has aspects of the Shape security components embedded in it. But it's interesting, right? I mean, F5 more as a WAF, really, right? Buys Shape security with some bot management. I don't know how end-to-end they are. I'm curious if what you guys'
Yeah, that's
thoughts
an
are?
interesting. When I hear end-to-end, first I'm thinking of like encryption and key management and key distribute, key exchanges. In this case, I think they're more calling out how much how much can you trust the browser? And sort of that browser attestation perspective. That's going to be kind of my guess is what they're getting here from end to end. So we sort of always say, yes, the web server is trusted, but what about it's easier on our mobile devices through device attestation, things like that. But the web browsers still are just saying, sure, I'll run your JavaScript. And trust me, I am a Mozilla version X or Chrome this, even though I'm a curl, front end.
Yeah, they also added Nginx App Protect in this announcement, so a couple pieces, and then Aspen Mesh Secure Ingress, whatever the heck that is. I have no idea what that is.
I want to go skiing.
Yeah, right. Interesting. The next product announcement: Checkmarx simplifies automation of application security testing for modern development in DevOps. So this dropped out this morning as well. So they call it Checkmarx Flow. Is an orchestration module for the Checkmarx software security platform that tightly integrates with application release orchestration and agile planning tools. It's a mouthful.
It is.
Wow. What does that even mean?
I think
Thank you.
What I think it's supposed to do is integrate different testing points in the CI/CD pipeline by integrating with some of the existing tools. But yes, I think
So now I need tools to test my tools that are testing and deploying the code that's been tested and by other tools.
I want to say it's like we know that rather than using too many buzzwords and confusing everyone, it's sort of like we know how to interact with APIs.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's
Right?
all this really means.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you have this API to trigger this, and we'll send the data from there to this other API, and cool, that's it. So, let's put the...
And then we'll centralize all the
simplify.
data so you can kind of see it all in one place.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's what they did.
Yeah.
They call it
That's fine.
Checkmarx Flow, CX Flow.
Well, where I do actually, now that I read this again and listen to what everyone here has had to say, it is kind of interesting, all the different points in which you apply testing to your software and how independent and disparate they are. If there was something that could then consolidate that, right? Like I'm looking at the static code analysis. I'm maybe looking at the binary analysis. I'm looking at the inventory, or what is that called?
The composition.
Composition analysis.
composition,
Yeah,
yeah.
software composition analysis. Then I'm doing some level of the unit testing I just talked about earlier.
Yep.
Then I'm actually scanning my app.
Then you're
I'm
doing
also
a DAST,
you looking inside my containers once there are images, making sure everything's good at that stage, right? All that data has to be collected and funneled back to developer. I'm sure there's solutions out there that are probably doing some of this today, but to me, it's moving so fast, it's hard to keep up.
Right. Yeah, and I think here is just bringing it all together to figure out, because you described very complex, and like a team is going to be needed to support tying all those together.
Right.
And so, I think hopefully this helps that team be, an army of one rather than like having to be 10 or 15 just to automate your entire pipeline.
Yeah. I was talking to a startup in the Innovation Dungeon last year at RSA. For those who haven't been here, it's like 3 stories below
It's
ground.
not anymore.
Oh, really?
It's over here. Yeah, they moved
Yeah, they
it. So
moved
it's
it.
not
Yeah.
at the Marriott Marquis.
Okay.
You used to have to go down
Yeah,
the
you keep
couple
going down,
escalators.
down,
yeah.
down.
No, it's over here. It's in South, I think. It's in Moscone South.
Thank you for saving me from getting lost.
Yes.
But there was one I was talking to who they were claiming they did they had a product which would integrate everything and bring it back. And I'm like, how much funding do you have? And they're like, oh, we're seed. And I'm like, you have plugins for all of this stuff? They're like, yeah. I'm like, no, I don't
Maybe, but how
Yeah.
feature rich I mean, they're missing out on a lot.
Right.
My snarky response to you is going to be you integrated in through Elk, right? I mean, that's what
Yeah.
devs and
But
sort of works, but yeah.
I mean, anytime you looked at an API, you can use a very small portion of it and go, yeah, we support that product that's on the other side of that, right? Like, I'm thinking of HubSpot. I'm like, I always make sure I preface it with, that's a proof of concept that's using like 10% maybe of what's available in HubSpot, right? Because their API is gigantic. I mean, it's very well documented, very nice to work with, but that's where I think they get support from, right?
we
wrote
wrote
a
a little
module.
feature.
Thing,
yeah,
yeah.
one little feature out of that. The last one I thought was interesting because we've talked a little bit about some of this on the encryption side. Wolf SSL announces the new and improved Open SSL compatibility layer. So supposedly this is to help the Open SSL library pass FIPS certification, which I thought was interesting. Just kind of announcement. We've talked a lot about the deprecation of older versions of SSL and TLS. Here they're trying to create this compatibility layer to kind of bridge the gap a bit. Is what it kind of looked like.
Yeah, so there was another vendor that was doing FIPS Open SSL. I'm not sure if that was Wolf or someone else, but it's interesting because Wolf was on my radar with the IoT and embedded side of things. So I think now they're trying to expand out a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, this just stood out as like, interesting as a neutral comment. Just in the idea of there's, boring SSL, Libre SSL. But I think possibly you're onto something there is how do you address those IoT devices or get a long-term life for devices onto TLS 1.3 and actually keep them there in a way that probably is good.
Probably is good. I hope so. That's it. That's all I found for the application security news so far at RSA Conference.
So
Not
far,
bad for day one.
Not bad, yeah.
So I had a question for the panel. Do you see everything going serverless, or are we going to hang on to certain infrastructure that runs in containers? Because kind of my strategy now is, if I didn't write the application, maybe it's open source, I'm trying to put it inside of a container so I get that continuous pipeline, right? And integration, not so much in deployment, right? So yeah, with things I don't control the code, I can't really push into using a pure service or serverless in a cloud environment because I don't control that much of nor do I want to control that much of the code, right? Applications I'm writing ourselves, I can control the code, so therefore I can say, Amazon can probably do a lot of this stuff better than we can, like authentication and certificate management, which is kind of what we're just talking about. So, but do you see it pushing all into serverless eventually, or are we always going to be in the state where, we've got some microservices and our apps are all serverless?
I mean, you just jumped over quite a large population out there that aren't even thinking about going to containers.
Yeah.
So there'll always be a mixture of it, I think, at least from where I'm standing.
You're not going to containerize the mainframe.
You can run containers.
You can run containers on the mainframe.
On the mainframe, but that means you still have on-prem infrastructure, right?
Well, I
You're
think
managing that.
containers can live on-prem or in the
Yeah,
cloud.
and
in my
so
opinion.
So can serverless. That was one of the bigger shocks to me last year. That
Yeah.
a good number of customers, when they'd say enterprise serverless, they meant on-prem.
On-prem.
You want to run that, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of defeats for me the purpose of serverless.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I want
I
someone
would
else
think
to
so.
manage
Yeah,
the infrastructure.
I just
wanna
wanted to
bring
do
my
its thing.
code right.
Yeah.
Or my business problem really, and solve
Yeah,
it with a
that's what I
service,
was
right?
going to glom onto is more of just the serverless is great for certain types of design patterns. Are you very stateless? Does a serverless just need to really spin up and down broadly in bursts? Or containers might be something that are better suited to a different, like an authentication backend probably is still going to be containerized, whereas serverless is going to be great for vetting uploaded content by users, user-generated content. So I still think, I can't see everything going to serverless, despite there's a great desire, I think, for developers to abstract as much as possible and say, all I really care about is the code I'm writing, whether it's Go or JavaScript or Ruby or Python, what have you. Like, I don't really care about the CPUs or the cores or what this slice is or what the syscalls are or what micro agent is hooking into this. I just want to write my code, run it, and and have all the rest of it just taken care of.
Yeah.
I think it allows you to focus more on the business logic and the user interface, right? I think we do lose a significant amount of time to plumbing that could be going towards focusing more on the code and also
usability
the
and
usability and the
user
interfaces,
experience
right?
and
There
other things.
is something we had. I can't remember the discussion. We had a discussion a couple weeks ago. Is the idea that with Lambda, you could actually say we're not only going to have individual functions, but we can actually have a unique IAM role for almost each line of code or each of our functions. So now, if you want to dive into that, that sounds a little bit tough from a manual perspective. But rather than just saying we've decomposed our application and we're running our application at least privilege, we can actually say we're running this function at least privilege. This specific Lambda is least privilege. I think there's a great appeal there. How it works out in practice, though, and if it actually can be done to any reasonable degree, remains to be seen.
Interesting.
Good question.
Yeah. So
Good
where
answers.
else can we see you guys for the rest of this week? Do we
Right
think?
here, Broadcast Alley. We're not. Tomorrow, I don't think Paul and I will leave this place.
Yeah,
in
tomorrow's
Wednesday.
books.
So, anybody want to see us? We're going to be right here in
Come
Broadcast Alley.
That's where the party
That's
is.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's it. So so Moscone West with you can come see Paul. Thank you, Paul, Matt, John, and thank all of you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week on Application Security Weekly.